trusted. We have due dissidence, due dissidence, due dissidence, due dissidence, due dissidence. Now here's Russell and Keith. Here's Russell and Keith. Here's Russ and Keith. Here's Russ and Keith. Let's go!
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Hello, everybody. What is up? It's the Do Dissidents podcast. Welcome, one and all. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
And that, folks, is our theme song 2.0, written for us by friend of the show,
Custom
Nick
made.
INGVOLDSTAD. Yes, thank you so much to Nick for making that theme song for us. We put it to some video and some graphics, and that's our new theme song that we are premiering today. So I want to thank Nick. His Bandcamp site is in the description of this video, so definitely check him out. And Nick, thank you very much for doing that for us. We thought that came out great. In fact, I'm tempted to just end the show now. We're not going to.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we're not going to.
We're going to do a George Costanza.
Yeah, exactly. Leave him wanting more. We'll take Robert Penner's advice.
That was our show, and good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night. That's it. We should quit while we are ahead. We want to thank our patrons, of course, for making this show possible. Patreon.com/Do Dissidents or DoDissidents.substack.com. Robert P. I still didn't add Robert P. to the list. We had so much to do today to prep the show, and I was not feeling well at all this morning. That's why we had to do the show later, because my wife and I both got slammed with something. It's not the big C, I don't think, because we both took tests and they were both negative, but it's something. We both woke up feeling terrible. It's very strange. We think it might be a humidifier that we put in the bedroom in the winter because we smelled it now and it smells awful. So maybe it was just giving us bad air all night. But we both woke up just feeling like absolute hell. And when you wake up feeling like hell, I figured I should split bedtime duties with the twins with her tonight, because usually she puts the kids to bed herself on nights I do this. And I'm like, if we're both feeling bad, it's not fair for me to stick her with that duty by herself. So that's why we're on a little bit later. But we had a lot to do.
And that's why I'm single.
Well, yeah, right. We had that to do. We had our show graphics that we had to do. We had to listen to an entire Monk debate to prep for tonight. There was just a lot going on.
And my Wednesday video is dropping an hour late because Keaton put like a pancake-sized logo on it.
Yeah, Russell thought that the logo I embedded in the video was too big, and he just told me that like 10 minutes before we went on. I should have just texted you that it was up so you could have watched it and give it a final approval, but I didn't think because I just figured it's a logo.
Yeah.
So we're going to premiere Russell's Wednesday video essay at 10 Eastern. We still have to sign off, though, Russell, about 8:50 because I need time to prep that. But that'll premiere at 10 Eastern on our YouTube channel. It's this cool video essay that he did. It actually came out really, really great. And I say this, just both objectively speaking, but also I say it came out great, especially considering how new Russell is to the world of video editing. I've been editing video for 15 years now, since 2007. And I was very, very surprised and impressed by how quickly, Russell, you picked up on it, because there were a ton of edits in this video, because copyright being what it is, you're not advised. I won't say you're not allowed, but you're not advised to have a clip be more than 5 seconds long at a time. And so 13 and a half minutes divided by 5 seconds, there's hundreds of edits. And for some
a lot of those are 2-3 second cuts.
Right. They're 2-3 second cuts and motion effects on stills. And, for somebody who just started video editing 6 months ago, as somebody who did it for 15 years, I was pretty impressed that you picked up on it that quick.
Thank you. It's because I'm obsessive.
Yeah.
I am obsessive. Like, I picked up piano at 47. Like, you got to be an insane person.
Yeah, that's hard to do. That's definitely hard to do. All right. So we figured this would be a great
Thank you.
episode to do. Oh yeah, no, it came out really good. Very excited for everybody to watch it. It's going to premiere at 10 o'clock Eastern tonight, and then it'll obviously be up on YouTube forever after that. So give it a view when you have a chance. We should also be making, I haven't checked to see if it's working right. If it isn't, too bad. Our Rockfin live stream debut tonight. So we should be live on Rockfin right now. So hello, Rockfin, if you're there, if it's coming through. And we're live on
Hello
Rumble,
out there
Twitter,
in TV
Twitch.
land.
Yes, and Facebook. All right, so we went live last, what was it, Friday that the Twitter files dropped? I think it was Friday, yeah. We went live that night, just an impromptu live stream, knowing we would get a really big crowd, knowing that was going to be a really hot story. And it was. We had a huge audience. We got some new subs, some new followers. So we thought we should follow up with some more Twitter files related content tonight. So it's pretty much a one issue show. We have a few segments that we have prepped, but I was thinking about it. Really, the thrust of the show for people who are new here, and there's some of you who are new here because we got some new subs. I was really, because people often try and sort of they try and pinpoint, okay, what are you? And we've even had that question directed at us a bunch of times recently. Is this a left show? Is this a right show? Right? Whatever. I think I finally crystallized it. Like the three pillars of my politics, and Russell, kind of seems like yours, is social democratic economic reforms, the sort of imperative of labor sort of collectivizing and leveraging its power against management, against capital, right?
Yeah.
One. Number two is war and peace, very strong anti-war. And number three would be this. Number three would be free speech. Like those are the three real top issues for me. And so where that falls in terms of left, right, it's hard to say nowadays. It's a mixed bag.
It is. And I'll call
right wingers are correct right now, and only on the social democratic side are the left nominally correct. Although even the ones who claim to be don't fight for it. You had the squad roll over for Joe Biden's union busting or strike busting, I guess, bill there. And so that's kind of where you're at.
And really, hang on. According to Desiree, Sabby Sabs promoted our show on our live stream.
Oh, well, that's very nice of Sabby Sabs. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, Sabby Sabs, and check out Sabby Sabs as well. I didn't know she was on our. I mean, I knew she follows us on Twitter, so I know she knows who we are. But that was very kind of her to give us a shout out. I appreciate that. That's probably partly why we have a bigger than usual crowd in here at this early in the stream.
So, and I was going to say, and also, I mean, on cultural social issues, I would say that we are traditional liberal universalists with a focus on our common humanity.
Yes, I think that's well put.
Yes.
All right, so there was a debate on November 30th, which was before the Twitter files dropped, right? So that's where we're going to start the program this evening. We're going to play some audio from the Monk debate. I had video, but I'm hesitant to play it because there's almost no video of Monk debates on YouTube, so I don't know if they're sensitive about people playing video, so I'll just play the audio. There was a Monk debate featuring Matt Taibbi and Douglas Murray versus Michelle Goldberg and Malcolm Gladwell. And this was not on the issue of free speech per se, but it was on the issue of whether or not you ought to, meaning one, right, ought to trust the mainstream media. Taibbi and Murray argued no, and Goldberg and Malcolm argued that you should. And so we thought, I mean, Russell came up with the idea, and I think it's a great idea that we should look into whether we are allowed to first, but we should look into doing a watch party because this whole debate was really interesting.
It was very interesting and very revealing and very ironic now, given the timing, because the Hunter Biden laptop dominated the last part of this, and just knowing that Taibbi was sitting there, knowing he was about to drop this tweet storm, but he couldn't talk about it. That might be why he was a little quiet, because really Douglas Murray who some of you may know, some of you may not. I actually read his book, War on the West. He's written a few books. He's a really commanding personality. I would say he won that debate. If one person out of the 4 people on stage won that debate, it was Douglas Murray. He really dominated the stage.
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely true.
He's
And
like a William F. Buckley for our times.
Yeah, for sure.
Meaning out of the closet.
Did I freeze? Yeah, right. I froze for a second there, but I'm back. Okay. Yeah, so this was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, and one of the reasons why I want to do it as a full watch party if we can is because unfortunately these like formal debates don't make for great clip material because they're like 3 or 4 minute monologues. There's not a lot of crosstalk. There's not a lot of, people challenging each other in that way. And so
Right,
it's the kind of thing where we would really like to watch it all the way through because it was really interesting. It's a thing where you can really do a lot of commentary on. But I'm going to play the segment here where the Hunter Biden laptop comes up. And so let me just play the sound here. It'll be pretty clear to most who is speaking, but I will make a point to clarify that as we go.
Hunter Biden's story.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
A very. Of course, you don't want to
Is
hear
there
it.
no end to the
Okay, so that's Malcolm Gladwell. So, here we go. Oh, here we go. Oh, yawn. Hunter Biden. Yawn.
He was really throughout. Michelle Goldberg, I felt more like she just lives in a bubble. I felt like she was an honest actor living in a bubble. Like the way that she processed, I don't know if you have that clip or if you selected it, the way that she processed the meaning of the DNC leak and automatically assumed that was something people should have been protected from.
Wow, I was right on that. Yeah, that's coming up in this. Absolutely.
But that struck me as honest ignorance. Whereas this guy, he pulled the race card basically every single time.
Oh yeah, well we'll get into that. Yeah. No, I mean he really came off,
which is funny because actually I don't think people realize this. Taibbi is half Filipino.
Yeah. Is he? He's half?
He's half Filipino.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought. Okay, I didn't know he was half. I knew.
I'm not sure if it. Okay. I think it's his mother.
Okay. All right. Well, let's watch this here.
Take the Hunter Biden story.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
A very. Of course, you don't want to hear it.
Is there no end to the kind of Twitter stuff you guys are going to dredge up?
Of course, you don't want to hear it, Malcolm. Of course, you wouldn't, because it goes against your ideological presumptions.
In 2016,
now here's Michelle Goldberg talking about the 2016 DNC leaks. This is what Russell was talking about, and I thought this was a pretty fascinating thing that she says here.
In 2016, I was at the Democratic convention, and you sort of saw how it turned the mood, how it soured the mood, how it angered so many of the Bernie Sanders supporters. So it had a real impact on the way that race unfolded. And I think that in retrospect, a lot of media came to see that how that material was obtained and how it was kind of strategically disseminated was as important of a story as the contents of those emails, and that they had made a mistake by only focusing on the latter. And so they didn't want to make the same mistake again with the Hunter Biden laptop. And you were arguing, it seems to me, that they should have. Yeah.
Okay, let's just pause it right there. That's just pretty astounding that she says that. And this again just shows the bubble she's in.
That's the bubble that
she's
That's
lying,
what I'm saying. I felt like the other one was just a little fucking weasel.
Oh yeah, he's just an asshole, right?
He's an asshole. With her, you felt like she was an honest actor with some really dumb opinions that actually illustrated how bad the media is. Maybe that's why they won a historic victory. There has never been this much of a point swing in the history of these debates because it began pretty even, 48-52. And at the end, what was it, 67-33?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the debate, 48% of the audience said we should trust the mainstream media. 52 said we shouldn't. By the end, 67% said no, we shouldn't trust the mainstream media, and only 33% did. So by the end of the night, the audience actually reflected the actual polling of the people, meaning
Right.
regular people who don't go
Right.
to monk debates, right? I mean, this
Right.
attracts a
Right.
certain crowd, right? Just by
Right.
the nature of what it is, right?
Right.
But yeah, it was the largest point swing since they've been doing these.
Right.
And what she
Which
says there,
that's a
Go ahead.
heartwarming Christmas miracle.
Well, yes, absolutely,
Right?
absolutely. I mean, they crushed it,
Yeah. I mean, at the end, the audience saw through that bullshit.
right?
They didn't
Because
buy
both
they didn't
Gladwell
buy
and
the
Goldberg,
race card. They didn't buy all this crap. They didn't buy her argument here. Like, they live in that little bubble where what they're saying makes sense. And that's why that's why Malk, as Murray later refers to him, that's why Malk kept falling back on these tropes of his class. Oh, well, in the days that you admire of newspapers, this was really funny when he goes, well, a lot of people weren't paid attention to, and he continues from predictable race observations, which I would argue I would argue that's not true, actually, because you could go back and you could watch shows like Meet the Press putting Eldridge Cleaver on TV, and they would never fucking put somebody like that on TV today. They would never put a Malcolm X on those types of shows, and they used to regularly platform people like that on their shows. So I would actually disagree with this whole premise that they have more black voices. Actually, I'm not even sure if that's true. They definitely have more black people working in the newsroom. I'm not sure if they actually have more black guests. That would be interesting to look into. But certainly they circumscribe the range of opinions that they will allow in a way that surprisingly they did not then. If you go back and you look at who they actually would have on their shows. But then he goes on to say, well, they didn't pay attention to the poor. Oh, yeah, man. They are all over that now.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, no.
The
Right.
news business has really tuned into those working class issues, haven't they? We can see that, especially coming out of a week where they in lockstep threw these railroad union workers under the bus, like universally. Took the party line on it, took the administration line on. Well, we can't have this right before. Oh, yeah, you're really focused on the poor. Actually, as Taibbi often points out in his writing, most big newspapers back then had a working class reporter. That would be their beat, who would write in a certain style. It would be a Studs Terkel in Chicago. In New York, that was Jimmy Breslin. Wrote in that voice. You'd have a guy who wrote in this very, worldly kind of, and the guys down at the docks have this to say. Like, it was a convention of newspapers, and now that does not exist. I can't even think of a reporter who works that angle at any newspaper that I can think of.
Well, you're right. I mean, Taibbi has spoken about this. He comes from a news family. He mentions in this debate almost all of his family growing up were in the news business.
Right.
And he talked about his father always told him the story is the boss. I believe that was the line.
Yep.
Right. That in like his opening statement, he references the story is the boss. Our role as journalists, our role as reporters is to get the story. And then we give that story to the people. And what the people do with that story is up to them. And the really fascinating thing about what Goldberg just said there is that flies directly in the face of what Taibbi already made a point to sort of, combat.
Right.
She's saying, yes, those DNC emails were true. And yes, they were newsworthy, but look how it ruined the mood at the convention.
Right.
The
mood.
Yeah,
the mood.
It ruined the vibe at the DNC.
She's proving his point. You're a fucking reporter. What do you care about you're literally talking about the emotional impact.
Right.
On a political
She's saying
party.
It ruined the Democrats' party. And so we have to be more careful about publishing these stories because look at the impact that it had. Taibbi's whole point in his opening statement, he says the impact is not our number one concern.
Right,
the story
right.
is the number one concern. Our job is to tell the story. And then she comes back here, well, you leaked these emails, and that happened right before the DNC, and the Bernie supporters were very upset about that, and you could tell I was there. It ruined the whole vibe. Like,
Yo, man.
Are you kidding?
Those DNC emails really, like, they were a bummer, man. They
And
brought
so we have to
everybody
be careful
down.
not to
We
make
can't
that
have that
mistake
again.
We can't make the mistake of ruining the Democrats' vibe again.
Right. And you know, look, the happy ending here is that the audience saw through it. They
Right.
saw through it because they didn't have their captive audience that they have for their grape drink version of news. They
let's hear
were talking to
Taibbi
actual
respond to this.
people. Well, one more thing I just want to mention before I forget, and this is why I was sorry. Like Taibbi, he definitely seemed like he was taken back by a few things. I think it was partly that his partner was such a character and he's just not a big personality like that. I think he just deferred a lot to Douglas Murray. But one point I really wish he had made, because one of the things Malk kept coming back to, and he hit the first time he pulled the race card was when he said, well, back then it was elite white men. And Taibbi has written about this more than anybody else, how being a journalist actually used to kind of be a working class profession, that these were not people who came out of the Ivy League. They were the opposite of that. They a lot of times they didn't even have college degrees. He's written a lot about this, how late part of what changed the news business is that now it's been taken over by Yaleys and people out of Harvard and people out of Stanford. And that's not who used to be in the news business. They used to be, you know, drunks, layabouts, you know, gadflies. They were working class people themselves. And particularly, they're talking about Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite didn't go to no Yale. He went to the University of Texas. And that would have been pretty common in that era. So he's flipping reality. Like, yes, you might have more racial diversity in the newsroom, but you have much less class diversity in the newsroom than you would have in that era.
Sure. No. And, you know, look, part of that is just because of the sort of neoliberal arc that we've been on in the past 40 years, whereas like now, because the wealth gap has widened so much, it's the same thing with the arts, really. Like the only people who can afford to toil in the arts are people who can live off of their family, right? Or people who aren't under pressure
and
to
the
make
work
ends meet.
reflects that.
Same thing with this, man. So many of these writers that you run into, they make nothing in their, you know, for the first 5-10 years that they're writing. They're making literally, I mean, next to no money. But they can afford to do that because they have, you know, they come from money now, you know, and that's almost a prerequisite to doing shit like this now, is you have to be able to afford to not make a living for a while. Because these professions have always been very unequal in that way. Yeah.
You always had a certain amount of that, but not like now.
No, because
not like now where those are the only people.
Now you have to live in a major city to really have the contacts to do it. I mean, yes, you can do it off a laptop to an extent, but you got to be where the action is. You got to be in a major city. Major cities are very expensive to live in. You need the apartments. Right. And the cost of living there is higher. So something
gives. Parties, all that
exactly.
Shit.
Right. You got to be able to elbow rub and all that shit. Exactly. I'm going to do these super chats before we get to the rest of this clip. Thank you guys. Cool Blue 199. Thank you very much. Lots of journalists did not go to college, period. Yes, I mean, that used to be true.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. Biden will be reelected. People underestimate him. All right. Well, I'll take that as a comment. But thank you for the $2. All right, here we go. Let's. I'll back this up a little bit, and then we'll play Taibbi's.
Listen, Mr. Grab him by the pussy. I'm trying to make some goddamn money because I could have made money off Trump because the odds were like 8-1, and I was calling Trump, and I didn't bet on it. So I am not making that mistake again. I'm going to bet on DeSantis. So if you want to have a little side bet going, reach out.
Yeah. Where did Ellen go? Ellen, our patron, was just here. But she had her mic off. All right, hopefully she comes back. All righty, here we go. Let's play this again.
First of all, the 2016.
I'll back this up a little bit so we can get a sense of her.
And I think that in retrospect, a lot of media came to see that how that material was obtained and how it was kind of strategically disseminated was as important of a story as the contents of those emails, and that they had made a mistake by only focusing on the latter. And so they didn't want to make the same mistake again with the Hunter Biden laptop. And you are arguing, it seems to me, that they should have.
Yeah. First of all, the 2016 campaign was not disinformation. It wasn't fake. Those emails were real. They were all authentic. The manner of how they were obtained was shady, but they were true. So you can't call it disinformation. Neither was this. This was not disinformation. And news organizations are not required to report on anything. No one has to do the story on the Hunter Biden laptop if they don't want to. They're not obligated to. However, they went beyond not covering it. They wrote stories that this was Russian disinformation. They repeated the statements made by 50 former intelligence officials who described this as having all the earmarks of a Russian information campaign. By the way, they didn't use the word disinformation. But that wasn't even the most important part of the story. The important part of that story wasn't even about Hunter Biden. It was about the decision by Facebook and Twitter at the behest, at least in the case of Facebook, of the U.S. government to quash or dial down that story and deny access to that story. That is a historic moment in the history of censorship in our country.
And
Now Murray gets even harder.
I've got to add to that. It's like, Malcolm, you're kind of, oh my God, what a yawnaroo the whole Hunter Biden story is. How boring to talk about the idea of corruption at an epic scale in the first family. How boring. Who would want to harp on about that? Let me try the counterfactual on you. It's October 2020. And a huge number of emails are suddenly dumped, revealing unbelievable scandal in the Trump family. I don't want to concentrate on the dick pics and the crack and the stuff. Never mind about Don Jr. if he'd been doing that. Let's just focus on the emails. There was a very easy way, Michelle, as you know, to certify whether this stuff was true. You could call up anyone on the email chains and say, did you get this email? They didn't bother with any of that stuff. They'd have been excited as hell across most of the mainstream media if this had been emails from Donald Trump's son saying, and I'm no Trump fan, let's not get into that cheap rut. But if it had been Don Jr. saying to his child, you've no idea what I've done for this family, the demeaning things I've gone through, I have to give half of everything I earn to my dad. Oh, you're Nauru, definitely. Who'd care about that? No, the point is simply that this was one of the occasions in recent years where the mainstream media showed its transparency as a political organization. That's why we care.
Okay. Exactly. And that got a big applause, and it was well deserved. That's the point. The point is it acts as a political organization now, which is what it is now.
Right. Which was something that predictably they kept trying to squirm out of the way. Oh, well, the media makes mistakes, but there's no pattern here. There's no conspiracy here. And then he does this whole straw man, which Murray kept calling him out on at the end, where Malk does this entire straw man of, and this is where they always go. Oh, so you think that all the media get together in a room and decide how they're going to cover stories? And this was another place where I wish Taibbi had been more bold, because that is something Murray dominated this. And look, he's very compelling and he argues very well. And I'm sure it's part of why the numbers swung so heavily, because he is a great speaker. He's a great presence. And Taibbi's a more laid back, writer. He's a more, quiet guy. But he has addressed that question extensively and said, no, of course it's not that everybody gets together in a room, but very quickly when you're working in a newsroom, you can see who gets promoted and who doesn't. You can see who moves up and who gets the plum assignments and who doesn't. So it becomes very clear to you very quickly where the incentives are. So the incentive structure favors a certain groupthink that is pro-establishment. I really wished he had been bolder, because he could have answered a lot of this. and he has extensively.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite quotes about this, and you can apply it to this conversation. You could apply it to several. When George Carlin was on I think it was one of the Bill Maher '90s panels, the politically incorrect show. He started talking. He started making similar points to what Marie and Taibbi were making in this context. I forget what the context was back then. And one of the right-wing hosts at the time called him a conspiracy theorist, as if there's a conspiracy, right? As if all these news people get together and they,
right. And that's not what anyone's saying. That's not what any reasonable person is suggesting.
Well, what George Carlin, he crystallized it so well. He says, you don't need a formal conspiracy when interests collide. Right? When a bunch of people have the same interests and they all have the same idea of how they are going to fulfill those interests, they know how to act. You don't have to call a meeting. There is not a regular club. They don't need a memo. They get it. We advance by acting a certain way, by undertaking a certain mindset and promoting a certain worldview. And so there doesn't need to be this formal conspiracy. There doesn't have to be a cabal of anything. I'm going to admit one of our patron callers. She is a return caller. She turned her mic on. I assume that means you're ready, Ellen. Ellen, welcome back.
Thank you, Keaton. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
Sorry, Russell, what's going on?
Yeah, George Carlin predates Bill Hicks. George Carlin goes way back to like the Lenny Bruce days. He did not rip off Bill Hicks. I just had to defend the honor of George Carlin.
Okay.
Well, I think that's good of you to do.
If anything, he was, and I wouldn't call it a ripoff, he was inspired by Lenny Bruce, if anybody.
Right. Exactly.
So I just want to talk about the idea of a conspiracy and what it is, because this is how I got turned off mainstream media. I got involved in immigration issues in 2006. My first trip to the border, a man said to me in a shelter for migrants who had been injured, I asked the question because I was there as a sort of a reporter at that point. If you could change one thing to make life better for migrants, what would you change? And he said, change your presidents. Well, that's when Bush was president and we got Obama. And so by that point, I knew about NAFTA. I knew about the connection between NAFTA and militarization of the border, and about a federal policy of pushing undocumented people, of funneling them to their deaths in the Sonora Desert. I waited over the process, over the time period of 8 years for mainstream media to have one freaking word to say about a federal policy that pushes migrants to their deaths in the Sonora Desert. The first time I had heard one word on that was about a month ago on NPR. So you had 8 years of their lips being sewed together, and not talking about Obama being the deporter in chief, not talking about border militarization, not talking about migrant deaths. And then Trump gets elected, and holy cow, there's an explosion of interest. Trump is a monster putting kids in cages. Are you freaking kidding me? Like Obama didn't do that first. Et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, is it a conspiracy in the sense they all get together and, come up with a scheme? No, but it's a conspiracy in the sense that the mainstream media is totally tied into the political actors.
Well, yeah, it's a combination of they're all drawn from the same social class, which is what Malk there was eliding and really trying to invert the facts. and make it as if it was more elite before. It was more racially and sexual in terms of gender homogenous before, but it was not more elite economically before. It's much more elite economically now. And as we can see from examples like Obama or Kamala Harris or Hakeem Jeffries, it's what Cornel West calls black faces in high places. Just because you have diversity doesn't mean you have representation. Those two things are not the same thing.
And so, when Obama was leaving, he says, I'm going to go over to Goldman Sachs now and get me some Benjamins.
Yeah.
And it's like he's kidding or something. No, he's not kidding or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those jokes that lands because it's true. Because he is going to do that, right? And so it hits a little harder because there is a truth.
Went right out windsurfing with Branson.
Yeah, right. And look, when it comes to the immigration issue, the actual politics of that issue, I mean, in this sense, what the media does is it's not fair, it's not right, but it does reflect the actual politics of that issue, because the only real politics of the immigration issue involve how we as a society feel about draconian border enforcement, because there will be draconian border enforcement no matter who oversees it. But if a wonderful, noble man like Obama oversees it, then we look at it and say, oh, shucks. It's a shame we have to do that. We can't take them in. We have to turn them around. We wish we didn't have to do that. With Trump, he's happy about it. He thinks, no, there's no guilt here. This is our country. We don't want them coming in. When they come in, we put them in a cage and we turn them the fuck around.
Well, that was a lot of
the heck around. I got to be. We have a Baptist on the line, but.
You got to say Sam Hill.
The Sam Hill, right?
What in the name of Sam Hill?
We turn him back to Sam Hill.
Yeah,
but yeah, look, I mean, that is really the politics of the issue. That's the only real question, is how do we feel about certain things? And they don't like what people like Goldberg, Malcolm Gladwell, all the people who were upset about the Netflix show, the show that Russ actually did a monologue on about the pyramids, right? They don't like it when anybody has an idea that challenges theirs. They'll just call that a conspiracy theory, whether they even mean that or not. Right? Conspiracy theory is just an idea that you can't prove within seconds of saying it. Right. Anything that leaves any ambiguity, and anything that requires any imagination to these people is a conspiracy theory. Right. And they shut that out. They're very challenged by that. They feel very affronted by it.
There's a real connection between the railroad workers and undocumented people, because each of them has been set up. They've been set up to lose. They've been set up by a narrative, and they've been set up by our inability to even think about these things and to challenge these things. So, NAFTA and the free trade and cross-border trade has been one of the arguments against a railroad strike. And of course, NAFTA is what displaced so many millions of people in Mexico, followed by CAFTA, followed by what would have been, and
the immigrants coming in are getting exploited too. I mean, we were having a little debate about this on the midterm election night, and one of the one of our guests,
you've got undocumented people who are crossing the border illegally. Because we don't allow them to cross legally. And we knew what we were doing at the time we signed NAFTA. We knew what we were doing at the time we militarized the border. And it's the same with the railroad workers. We know what we're doing. We're taking from them the only leverage that they have, which is to cross these lines.
Yeah. All right. We should get this moving along.
Yeah, let's get the super chat here. Cool Blue, FYI, George Carlin, 1937 to 2008. Bill Hicks, 1961 to 1994. Thank you for that. Devin has a retort to that, who's arguing with Cool Blue. And Devin, I'd be happy to put your response on the screen if you would attach it to a, $3 or $4 super chat donation.
Yeah.
Tusker, thank you for the $5. Quit using drug trafficking to fund the CIA and quit trying to destabilize foreign governments. That would help with immigration. Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, everyone's got to
got a big
earn a
change,
living, and that is how I make mine. Okay, I don't question how you make a living.
All right, Ellen, I'm going to remove you for now. If you want to talk again, just turn your mic back on. All right. Great. Excellent. Okay, so that was the debate. Now, that was on November 30th. So as that Hunter Biden conversation exploded, like Russell mentioned earlier, well, the funny thing about that was that Taibbi knew he was sitting on a treasure trove of emails, files, internal memos from the social media company, obviously, who he rightly said censored the story. And you could even, if you go and you look back on that exchange, you could in retrospect, it was, you could tell what was going through his head while he was saying it, because he said the real story here is not Hunter Biden. The real story is the censorship. And he mentioned Facebook too. Obviously, he didn't have the Facebook files. He had the Twitter files. And so let's get to that. So we did a whole stream. It was about 2.5 hours long on Friday as that Twitter thread was breaking. Of course, Taibbi made the totally gangster decision to release his findings on Twitter as a 2.5 hour long, sort of 45 volume Twitter thread. And each one had a lot of new information coming to light. He had emails, he had memos, he had all kinds of open secrets lists that, showed the orientation of the people who worked at that company, donating 98.5% to the D's and only 1.5% to the R's, right? So he did a very, very thorough job, and it was a lot of new information coming out 3 or 4 minutes at a time. But the response to Matt Taibbi was less diverse, right? I mean, the
hang on. You mean the unbiased press that has been diligently reporting every fart that comes out of Elon Musk's ass was not prepared to put this on the front page?
Well, the mainstream media. It's funny talking about the mainstream media since we just watched that whole thing, but they did not cover this at all. There was basically an entire media blackout of this.
And any coverage I saw, like Daily Beast, was basically about nothing to see here. We've known about this the whole time. All it shows is that there were people making decisions. It's
amazing. But the attacks on Taibbi. See, this is why people
this is what they do, and I just want to say, the people who consume this media, that's why they're such big assholes. You can never debate them without them turning it into a conversation about you personally, about your character, about your flaws, because that's what the people that they get information from do. That's how they think you're supposed to debate, because that's what they absorb. That's what they're steeped in.
Exactly. Right. So let's take a look. Mediaite put together a compilation, the 27 most embarrassing reactions to Taibbi thread about Twitter censoring Hunter Biden tweets. If you remember a while back, there was a sort of compilation video of all these local TV anchors talking about a specific issue in a specific way. It's a threat to our democracy, threat to our democracy, threat to our democracy. Then they multiplied all the screens. So there were 20 anchors at a time saying the exact same thing, right? Happens on the left, happens on the right too, right? 2018 midterms, you had the caravan, all the local news stories, they were all saying the exact same thing. Well, here are the 27 most embarrassing reactions to the Taibbi thread. You have a similar situation going on here. Ben Collins, imagine throwing it all away, meaning throwing all the goodwill that Taibbi has built up, I guess, throughout his career, in the media. Imagine throwing it all away to do
With
PR
who? Not
work.
with you people.
No,
The
no.
second he started covering Democrats, you stopped seeing him on CNN and MSNBC. I remember when
he
he
hasn't
used to
been
be
a
on
fixture there for a
MSNBC.
while. Yeah.
I remember when they used to have him on when he was going after the Bush administration.
Right. Exactly. Imagine throwing all that goodwill away to do PR work for the richest person in the world. Humiliating shit. Chris Hayes. Watching some of the most famous, most powerful, and richest men red pill themselves into disaster. Pretty wild. I don't even know what that means.
Not like me. They told me what I had to say, and I just
Right.
go out there every night and say it, and I am rich, bitch.
Right. Exactly. I just go say it.
I just go
Imagine,
say whatever
here's-
they tell me to.
Mehdi Hassan. Imagine volunteering to do online PR work for the world's richest man on a Friday night in service of nakedly and cynically right-wing narratives and then pretending you're speaking truth to power. Elias Cepeda. Watching Matt's unbelievable fall into lazy reactionary commentator and now PR hand for the world's richest man. Let's go to another one. From calling Goldman Sachs a vampire squid to giving free PR to the world's richest billionaire. Man, what a career journey. Is everybody picking up on a...
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like this would make you believe that there's a conspiracy.
Well, that's what I said before.
It seems like they were all on a conference call.
How would you get the idea that these people are conspiring with each other? Jason Schreier. Editors are great, not just because they make your work sharper, but because you can ask them things like, hey, should I be doing PR work for the richest man on the planet? And they'll say, nah. Matt Taibbi.
Or you might say, hey, should I question this WMD narrative? Seems sketchy. And they'll say, nah.
Right, exactly. Matt Taibbi, what sad, disgraceful downfall. I swear, kids, he did good work back in the day. Should be a cautionary tale for everyone. Selling your soul for the richest white nationalist on earth. Well, he'll eat well for the rest of his life, I guess. But is it worth it? Jason Wilson, I know he's telling you what you want to hear, but that doesn't change the fact that he's working PR for one of the richest men in the world. He didn't get the story, says Ross McCafferty. It was handed to him so he could do PR for the world's richest man. PR for the world's richest man. PR for the rich. PR for the rich. PR for the rich. I have one challenge for these people.
Used to be a great journalist. Sad. The editor angle comes up with a few of them. That's like a variation on the theme. Some of them will bring up the editor issue.
Well,
this is what happens when you don't have an editor.
This is what I would ask them. What is the Democratic Party if not a PR firm for the rich? The Democratic Party is, in a sentence, a PR firm for the world's richest people. It is a way to basically give the world's richest people a way. It basically exists to launder the guilt of the world's richest people. That's what it is. It's rich people donate to this party so that this party can make them feel less bad about having been, so that these people can sort of feel good about being at the top of an unjust system while making themselves feel like they're trying to make it more just when they aren't. Right? That's what the Democratic Party is.
Well, and look, here's a perfect example. How are you in the middle of a pandemic deferring to Bill Gates? Why aren't you questioning his assertion that we cannot give the formula for the vaccine to the third world countries because they don't have the manufacturing capacity, which was completely untrue? Why didn't anyone ask him? That seems like an important thing to question, isn't it? So if you want evidence of this, because, a guy like Malk will say, where's your evidence of that? There's your evidence. How, no matter what you think about what the truth of that is, nobody asked him that. How could nobody fucking ask him that? How could nobody did that spread? No newspaper showed, no, actually, they have these enormous factories all over the world where this work could be done. They just took Bill Gates' word for it. They didn't question him. Who elected him to be the health czar? Bill Gates.
Sarah Reese Jones. We don't perform as a PR person to the richest man on the planet, but we do center how policy impacts the people over billionaires. I get, now that Elon Musk bought this platform, you see a lot of class consciousness among all these
all of
blue
a
check
sudden,
mark people. All of a sudden
they care about
billionaires. All of a sudden, they don't think billionaires should control speech. Right. All of a sudden, oh, what is this billionaire doing here? Whereas, obviously when the Sanders campaign would talk about, oh, you're being divisive. Oh, why are you being divisive?
Yeah.
That's not the American way.
No, and also
people are free to make $1 billion, right?
And
now,
these were private
the problem
companies.
is they have the richest man in the world going rogue. And that's a real problem.
Rogue. That's the
real
only
problem
issue.
because they're not used to billionaires not cooperating with them. They're used to billionaires understanding how they got to be billionaires, and so they give back, right? They play the game like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, right? They're not used to this, Richard Branson. They're not used to this, right? They're not used to a guy saying, you know what, I'm going to take 44 of my whatever, $270 billion net worth, and I'm just going to upend this very, very significant forum of public discourse, right? I'm going to upend it. I'm going to fire 75% of the people. I'm going to rewrite the rules. I'm going to open source. Right. I'm going to expose the documents, right? They don't like that. That's what they don't like. They don't mind that a billionaire could. They don't look. They got Mark Zuckerberg under their thumb. He's a billionaire. They don't have a problem with him because they brought him to heel. They had
now you never hear about Zuckerberg now.
No,
you never hear about him now.
No.
He got his mind right.
Exactly. After 2016, they dragged him in. How did you let these Russians buy these ads on the side? You know what I mean? Now a few years later, and but they whipped him into shape. That scared him enough, and now he does more or less what they want. Haven't heard about him. It's the billionaire who doesn't go along with the plan. That's what they're upset about.
Right.
That's
before they were celebrating the freedom of private companies to enforce their own rules. They were celebrating it. That was so wonderful. You were such a fool if you brought up the First Amendment, right? Because these are private companies. Until Elon Musk bought it. Now, all of a sudden, they're not private companies anymore. Now the government has to do something about it.
Not enough cereal. Thank you for the $5. Not enough cereal. We'll buy ourselves some cereal with that. That's like saying
cereal has a lot of pesticides in it, actually. I stopped eating it.
Oh, yeah? I get some of that non-GMO, sort of like pumpkin granola cereal. It's pretty good.
Doesn't mean it doesn't have the pesticides. I went over to oatmeal.
Oh, okay. All right. He's on oatmeal. Well, he'll get some oatmeal. That's like saying publishing documents on Trump's government is doing PR for Joe Biden. Well, yeah. I mean, Douglas Murray made that point. He said, look, are you telling me that if there was a leak, an October surprise that damaged the Trump campaign in October of 2020, that the media would be that careful about vetting it? They wouldn't be like, oh, no, we better sit on this because who knows, this could be wrong.
Of course.
No. And that's proven by the fact that they ran with wrong story after wrong story after wrong story for years. That was what Russiagate was. Russiagate was a series of wrong stories. A series
and that Taibbi talked about a lot.
Yeah, well, he hammered on that quite a bit.
He hammered on that. Yes. Yeah, it's even when we did the live stream when these came out, I guess I have not lost my capacity to be surprised, because if you remember on the live stream, I said, "Oh, they're not going to be able to ignore this," and ultimately, I think that's true.
No,
I think that's true in the end.
It's only 2 days old, right?
They won't be able to ignore it because there's just going to be too much momentum behind the story. But for the moment, yes, like I didn't think they would just not report it the next day like that. That's beyond, even as low as my opinion is of them. I thought they'd feel like they had to.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Oh, and this was something else that Douglas Murray brought up. As soon as the Colorado shooter, if anybody's noticed, as soon as the Colorado shooter claimed to be non-binary, you never heard about that story again, right?
Right.
If they had found a bunch of white nationalist, anti-gay literature in his house, that would be all you'd be hearing about right now. And by the way, same thing with Paul Pelosi. As soon as they found that this guy's politics were not cut and dry, that they were kind of weird, right? He lives in a commune, some kind of commune in Berkeley, and what is this guy? And they couldn't just fit it into the white supremacist narrative. That's it. You didn't hear about it anymore.
Right. And it's not that these stories become unimportant. It's that once the narrative gets punctured, there's no longer any incentive for them to keep pumping out pieces about it. Right. Because it's no longer a consumer product at that point. It's a news story. And this is part of Taibbi's
They're not
whole
interested in
lament
news.
is that they're not interested in it once it becomes less sellable. Right. Not just FU money. He's got FTW money. Who are you talking about?
Must be
Is
talking
that,
about
that's
us.
probably Musk.
It's talking
Probably
about us.
Yeah, he's talking about us. It's like about Elon, I assume. Good point. John Dickinson, thank you for the $5. Why did no one question Gates asserting in 2020 April primetime TV that the pandemic would end unless everybody in the world has been vaccinated? Look, we are not able to get into the weeds of answering that as well as perhaps we would like to. Where you're just not allowed
we'd have to do
go
a little
there.
research.
We'd have to speak in codes, but look,
that's why I was going to suggest. What's the name of the company? Balenciaga. I wanted to cover that, but Jesus Christ, all the code words that we would have to use to cover that story.
Right, you have to come up with a new language to talk about that. Right.
Everybody who covers those stories, except apparently the Young Turks.
Look,
I
what
guess
I'll say
if you get to that level, they give a presumption of latitude.
Yeah.
But most people I see who cover those stories, literally, they find code words for the P word for fans of the playground, as Sidney Watson
from what I
calls it.
hear, from what I understand, once you get a big enough channel on YouTube, you can be put in touch with like a YouTube rep. So like you have a person now that you can go to. So if something happens to you, you can call someone and say, hey, this was unfair. Can you look into this? And there may be some actual recourse. If you're not at that level, you are at the mercy of robots. So it means there's just certain things you just can't talk about. It sucks, but that's the price of doing business, right?
Hey, listen, last night we were covering Balenciaga. We had some problems. You got to take care of the thing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Take care of the thing for us.
Yeah, what I'll say is in April of 2020, I think, I think if you can't say that there was fog of war there, you can't say there was fog of war at any time. I mean, at that point, I think to hold someone accountable for a bad prediction at that point is a little bit.
I don't hold them accountable for that necessarily. I hold them accountable for lying about why they wouldn't.
About why you couldn't distribute the medicine.
Yes, because that is not fog of war. That is purely a billionaire scumbag knowing that he's dealing with a complicit press that's not going to ask any questions.
Exactly. Right. All right, we'll keep going down here a little more. Going from Rolling Stone magazine writing about corporate corruption and power to tweeting a political hit job assigned by the richest man in the world is a wild fucking ride that all the drugs in Hunter Thompson's trunk could cause. This is all Taibbi making a deal to do PR for the richest man in the world in exchange for exposure. I don't really expect the world's richest man to. Like you said, it's just amazing. Where do people get the idea?
It's almost
that
like
haiku.
Like it's like a writing exercise. Okay, you have to write a tweet that includes doing PR for the world's richest man. The idea that Taibbi used to be great and now he sucks. And go do your own spin on a tweet with that content.
Yep. And look, we don't have to read through all of these, but
Taibbi, he posted this, and his tweet said, I'm going to look at this and look at which of these journalists have done PR for the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, the Democratic Party."
Yeah, no, that's a good point too, absolutely. But what this reveals is just, it just shows you how unoriginal these people are, how unintelligent they are, how incurious they are, how conformist to the core they are. They don't view originality as a virtue. That's why they call original thinkers conspiracy theorists, right? The guy on Ancient Apocalypse, what's his name? What's his name?
Graham Hancock?
Yeah. He has a theory, of ancient civilization that defies mainstream orthodoxy,
what do you care?
I suppose.
What
the hell do you care? Why is that an offense to you? It's an offense to these people because it's not just that they are incapable of original thought. They have contempt for original thought. That's what it is. These people just fundamentally do not like it
which
when
this is
people
what,
think for themselves.
well, this is what I don't understand. Like, look, you do know that that's the whole history of science, right? Like, that's how it's supposed to work. That
Right.
theory stands
Right.
until proven otherwise. And journalism, as it's been practiced post Yellow Sheets, as it's been practiced in the modern era, has basically taken its cue from science, that you follow the facts wherever they lead, and that theory of the facts stands unless proven otherwise, but you want people to question the premise because maybe it turns out to be otherwise. What they call the news, the first draft of history, right? So you want people questioning that first narrative. Just like in science, you want people. That's why we call it the theory of evolution. We don't call it the fact of evolution. It's the longer a theory stands, the more credibility it has. But that's the basic premise of science, that nothing is final, right? So the entire, this is what's really, they never seem to think about. All of these social causes that you claim to care so much about, but really just have hijacked as a virtue signaling opportunity, would never have happened based on your philosophy. Homosexuality was not only considered socially to be an evil and a sin, it was scientifically considered to be a pathology. In the DSM manuals, homosexuality was a category of pathology. Now, if people had gone with your premise, it still would be, right? Because why? What are you doing? Questioning the scientific establishment. You're it's science.
Who are you?
Science.
To ask this question.
Right. It's right there in the manual. It says right there, manual. So they never seem to think about that all of these things that they claim to believe so deeply, these beliefs were only arrived at because people questioned authority, because people questioned convention.
Yep. 100%. Cool Blue. Thank you, man. Cool Blue is really making it rain tonight. What is this, your third or fourth super chat? Thank you, Cool Blue.
Thank you, man.
Are
you drunk?
Super chats are very welcome, by the way. And I got to plug our Patreon, obviously, while we're here. I'm going to do that right after we read this message. These establishment tools sound like the Twitter bot farm, which is a part of the Democratic Party's unofficial jobs program. Yeah, certainly do. Certainly sounds like a bot farm to me. I'm not saying they are one, but they may as well be one. I mean, to me, that's the point. Like, these may as well be bots. That's why we call them hill bots. That's what we call them. That's how the hill
well, they
bots
are. If you've talked to
may
one
as well
of them,
be robots.
If you've talked to one of them, you've talked to all of them. You know, I had this was interesting.
Literally, right? If you talk to one, you talk to all of them. Look at this
scroll.
All They're all
they
saying
all,
the exact
they all
same
argue
thing.
the same way. Once in a while, when you debate them, they'll debate the facts first. And then if they don't feel like they've crushed you or gotten you to go along with their, then it turns personal very quickly. And then it turns into the Inquisition. Because then no matter what you respond, they're looking for that thing that they can use to accuse you of being an isterophobe in some way. It doesn't matter, man. You could be talking about what kinds of toppings you want on your pizza. They will find a way to distort it to satisfy themselves that, oh, well, you don't agree with me because you're this type of horrible bigot, right? They'll find a way to that's their fallback. And that's exactly what Malk did, right? That wasn't even his last line of defense. That was his go-to right from the beginning.
Right. He says, you seem to yearn for the days when white people dominated the profession, and
that was in every subsequent answer he had. Every subsequent answer.
Once he went there, he went back to that over and over again.
White people. Yeah, that was it.
Extraordinary. I mean, that was just a truly discrediting performance on his part. I mean, it was really just
well,
it was awful.
Well, you know, it's funny. I wish you could show the video because they left that stage so deflated and Taibbi and Murray stayed on the stage as soon as those numbers
It's funny.
came
I didn't
up.
watch that.
They just walked off stage.
It's funny. We were rushing to prep this show today. Like I said, a million things going on. Sick wife, one sick son, millions of videos to do. So I didn't end up. I just watched the end, and then I knew what the point spread was. So as soon as the debate ended, I turned it off and got on to the next thing.
No, I watched that because I was curious. I was curious about how they reacted to that because they did that live. They showed what the results were.
Oh yeah, and then you could see the
they
reaction.
just literally slunk,
get their ass handed to them. Yeah. Well, they deserved it. I mean, it was a terrible performance.
That was very satisfying. I
it shows
you
a
lot of pleasure from that moment.
It shows you how weak these people are, how weak their arguments are, how, put them in the ring with two, competent debate rivals. And they stand no chance. And I say competent debate rivals there. The reason I hesitated to say it's not that Taibbi was incompetent. It's just he's a little too shy. He's a little too timid.
Right,
I mean, he won the debate anyway. Even when he and Bill Maher debated Russiagate, he won that debate hands down. But he didn't really go for it the way Murray does. Like
that's what I'm saying, especially because so much of what they were saying was right down the fucking strike zone for him. It was right where he goes with his writing. He could have answered a lot of that better than Murray could, because this isn't Murray's beat, right? Murray's all about wokeness, basically. Taibbi, the problem with modern journalism is his obsession, and he could have answered a lot of that stuff in a way that Murray could not. Murray's very charismatic. He's funny. It's not that his answers weren't cogent and relevant, but Taibbi could have gotten into the weeds on some of that stuff a little better, a lot better.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, guys, we have one more segment to do before we wrap. Before we do that, I do want to tell everyone, if you can, go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and help support this project for as little as $5 a month. You get call-in access to the show, as well as access to bonus videos every month. So if you can go and do that, that would be awesome.
All right, so I want to explain something, because I heard this from like one other person in the comments. All right, so some people complained about getting badgered on the live stream about subscribing. Okay, so listen, from this end of it, let me tell you, because the person said, people are more likely to subscribe if you don't badger them. That is where you're wrong. Right. That is where you're wrong. Actually, you know what? My instinct when we were doing it was kind of like, shut the fuck up, Keaton, man. It's enough already. But you know what? It worked. It worked actually, because I'm watching the subscriber numbers go because everybody watches that video now. You think people, it's not that they're ill-intended, but they just don't think of it, man.
They don't think to do it, right?
They don't think to do it. So yes, like
you have to remind them.
Maybe we went over the line with it a little bit, but we did it with a smile. Come on.
No, listen, I maintain, yes, we did it with a smile. We did it in a joking way that I thought came off well. And, look, in an ideal world, you'd be right. In an ideal world, people would respond to quality content. They would hit the subscribe button.
They would just
we do not live in an ideal world.
That's not
in
what
this
happens.
world, you have to badger the customer. Why do you think they play commercials on TV? Why do you think the commercials on TV are louder than the show? You ever notice that? The commercials are mastered at a higher volume. You know why?
Yeah.
Because they need to beat
most
into your
annoying
head.
shit.
Go to McDonald's and buy the fucking chicken McNuggets. Like, that's how you have to do it.
Speaking of which, listen, while we're all still in here, I'm going to plug my video. I worked my ass off on that Wednesday video. So it was going to drop at 9, but we had an aesthetic disagreement. So it's going to drop at 10.
I say it was more an oversight on my part than a disagreement.
It's going to drop at 10. Please, if you can, watch it. I want the algo to catch it, because as far as I can see, nobody has done a video essay on that show. I will be the first. So if you can check it out at 10, please do. And John, yes, that video is funny and it's evil. So check it out.
It came out really
10
well.
o'clock. It will drop.
This is Nick. This is the musician who wrote our theme song, which we debuted. Thank you for the $5, Nick. Thank you very much. You certainly don't owe us any money for the after writing us that song, but thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. That song rocked. Thank you.
It was great.
Very funny.
It came out perfect.
You have a similar sense of humor.
See, this is why I didn't give you as much feedback going in, because Nick emailed me, hey, what should I try this? I say, listen, if you like the show, I trust that you get the essence of the show. So put that in a song, you'll be fine. That's it. That's all I told him. And that was that. And he did a great job. Nick says, another amazing debate to watch. Soho Forum, Scott Horton versus Bill Kristol. Watch a neocon face the repeated failures of interventionism. Satisfying. Yeah, I bet that would be. Yeah, I should. Absolutely. All right. One more segment that we do here before we wrap. So we got into the Twitter files the other night, obviously, but I just want to revisit a couple of these for now, just to set up this final segment here. So you can see here, item number 25, you can see the confusion in the following lengthy exchange. So this is after Twitter deemed the Hunter Biden laptop story hacked materials, right? They censored it, saying it was hacked, right? And so he says, you can see the confusion after that in the following lengthy exchange, which ends up including Gad and former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth. Comms official Trenton Kennedy writes, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this as unsafe. Next point. Everyone knew this was fucked, said one former employee, but the response was essentially to err on the side of continuing to err. So here's Yoel Roth. The policy basis is hacked materials, though as discussed, this is an emerging situation where the facts remain unclear. Given the severe, capital letters, the severe risks here and lessons of 2016, again, lessons of 2016, when too much information got out and people interpreted that as reason to vote for Donald Trump. That's what he means by the lesson of 2016. We're erring on the side of including a warning and preventing this content from being amplified. Vijaya Gad, what is the warning that will come up? When you click the link, you'll see the generic unsafe URL message. References spam, malware, and violations of the Twitter rules. Not ideal, but it's the only thing we have. The only thing we have, meaning we have no legitimate reason to censor this. And so we have to put up a malware warning, right? In order to censor
just to get people not to read this story.
Right. Just to get
how do you justify that? How do you dismiss that, as many of these reporters have, as just people with varieties of opinions having a debate? You know what they're really avoiding talking about? The fact that Ro Khanna is like a hero in this exchange. Ro Khanna got the problem. He understood, right? So how is it a nothing burger when you actually had a member of Congress come in there and say this is bad? How is it a nothing burger when they called it the Access Hollywood moment in their internal communications for the tech industry?
Right.
That's a nothing. They didn't think it was a nothing burger.
Well, here's Yoel Roth in a recent interview explaining the justification for censoring online speech. This was in reference to Twitter shutting down the Trump handle after January 6th. He talks about the trauma that was inflicted upon content moderators on that day.
The centrality of his account in
So you let him get away with it for a long time, in other words.
Well, we'd been enforcing on it, right? So we restricted the tweets. We put warnings on them. You couldn't like them. You couldn't retweet them.
He's talking about the tweets that Donald Trump set out in advance of January 6th. That's what he's talking about.
But we didn't ban him because it was a relevant part of a moment in American politics.
Right.
The events of the 6th happen. And if you talk to content moderators who worked on January 6th, myself included, the word that nearly everybody uses is trauma. We experienced those events, not some of us as Americans, but not just as Americans or as citizens, but as people working on sort of how to prevent harm on the internet. We saw the clearest possible example of what it looked like for things to move from online to off. We saw we saw the way that rhetoric about a stolen election was being mobilized on sites like thedonald.win. We saw the trafficking of this content in the fringe parts of the internet, and we saw people dead in the Capitol. All
right. So A few points here. First of all, the whole people dead in the Capitol thing, this goes to a narrative management of itself, because they
It
always
really
mention
does.
how it was a deadly day. They never mention the fact that the only people who died that day were the protesters themselves. Which,
Right.
on one hand, these are inhuman people. We need to lock these people away. The headlines come up, oh, this January 6th protester got 5 years. You hear the libs on Twitter, not enough, should have got 10, should have got 20, should have gotten life, right? So on one hand, they're these disgusting, awful people. On the other hand, we saw people dead in the Capitol. Oh, isn't that sad? Oh, wait,
Right.
who are those? Are those civilians? See,
which are the dead people?
They
And
they want to sort of create the image in people's minds still to this day, even when we all know what the facts are. They still want to imply, they still want people to have in their head that the January 6th protesters stormed the Capitol and killed innocent people who were not there for the rally, right?
Well, they don't want to talk about why.
Saying.
You know, I was debating somebody the other day, and they were talking about, you know, how January 6th, like, you know, as a justification for censorship, actually, it was part of the Twitter conversation. And they were saying, you know, well, you know, you have to, that couldn't have happened without the internet. I said that couldn't have happened without the Capitol Police letting them in. There have literally been thousands of protests over the years where that could have happened if the Capitol Police had let them in. Right. The left used to go all the time in the 60s and 70s. They tried to levitate the Pentagon.
Well, this is the other point. I mean,
protest.
this is the...
You think those guys wouldn't have walked into the Capitol if they had been allowed?
Well, of course. And this is the other point. There's one more small point, and then there's a larger one. The smaller one is, like, presidents have been having rallies for over 200 years. They don't need the internet to have a rally. They have ways of getting the word out. So it doesn't fall to you to stop the president from having a rally. The idea that this couldn't have happened without Twitter or couldn't have happened without the internet is absurd. Of course it couldn't have happened without the internet.
And I will say again, 1971, there were over 2,000 domestic bombings in the United States without the benefit of the internet. This is when they're still cranking things out on a mimeograph machine. So you cannot make the case that there's more political violence and more political turmoil post-internet. If anything, in my opinion, there is less. I mean, that's not an opinion. That's just a fact. I think there's less because everyone's sitting there in front of a screen. You know, you gotta be out in the street to cause that kind of mayhem.
Actually,
that you saw in 1970 when everybody's just doing this. Of course, there's less political violence. You're turning everybody into a freaking boneless worm sitting here in front of the screen. Of course, they're not out there doing anything.
Yeah. So that's point 2. Point 3, this is the really macro point that I think puts a button not only on this segment, but on this whole stream that we've done here, is that what you see in practice with these people, whether it's Gladwell, Goldberg, or Roth, or any of the 20 some odd blue check marks who we just read off in our last segment, you see people not able to reconcile their alleged belief in democracy with their contempt for a certain democratic outcome, right?
Yes.
That's what these people cannot do. They cannot, on the one hand, say, okay, we believe in the democratic process, but on the other hand, they can't handle the fact that the democratic process yielded the election of Donald Trump.
Right.
Those two things, they just can't add up in their head. And so
they just won't make
their response is to just shut things down. We have to we need less speech, less debate, right? Less.
And they don't want to admit that's what they believe. That's why speech equals violence. They have to make that formulation because they can't just say we don't believe in free speech.
But the thing is,
which is the fact, but they can't admit that.
But the thing is, they can't even really in their head go to that point. That's why they're not saying nix free speech. It's less. Well, this is a private company, so we need to tone it down because they can't make an actual value statement. They can't come out and say, we no longer believe in democracy because if democracy yields an undesirable outcome, we have to throw out the process. They want to keep the process except for on occasion when it yields an undesirable outcome, and that's
Right.
those two things are not reconcilable. You can't do
Right.
that. That does
Right.
not add up. That's why they sound
because
so
they're
ridiculous.
living in a fake world. They're
Right,
living
it's
in
a
the
fake
world.
world.
They're living in the world that Hillary painted, where it showed you this moment really illustrated where they are and how removed they are from the America people live in. How did she respond to Make America Great Again? America is already great. And she thought that was an own.
Right.
She thought she owned him there, right? This is the world that these people live in. So to them, America's already great, right? So the only reason that these people would vote for somebody like Trump is because they've been misinformed. They've been misinformed. They don't realize how great it is. So you have to control the flow of information, and then they won't be misinformed in such a way about how great the country actually is and how great they're doing. It's not that you told them that NAFTA was going to bring better jobs and now they're living in a meth addicted, half abandoned hellhole that they used to call a thriving hometown. It's not that. It's not that. It's that they're misinformed. If you can just control the information they get, they'll realize that this is a town bustling with opportunity that they live in. They'll learn to code, right? They'll learn to code.
Right.
I saw a very funny meme the other day, and it was from the right, but I thought it was pretty funny, where it said 1995, and it was a working guy saying, "I lost my job," and it was a tech guy saying, "Learn to code," and then it's 2022. "I got fired from Twitter," and the guy says, "Learn to weld."
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's good. Tusker asked, do super chats you get during live streams boost the algorithm for the replay video? I'm not sure about that.
That's a good question.
It's a good question. My guess would be no, but if it helps you guys donate, then you can think whatever you want on that. But thank you, Tusker. I appreciate that.
Yeah, donate. Yeah, it'll juice the thing.
No,
it'll make the thing do the thing.
Look, it helps us seriously. The super chats, the Patreon, the Substack. I'm going to post our Patreon link here in the chat. It helps us, especially on a day like today. I mean, today I was sick. I woke up feeling like absolute hell, so I wouldn't have gone out and worked anyway, especially since I thought I may have had the big C, so I wasn't going to go out and handle people's food.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That's considerate of you.
Yeah. That was nice of me. I'm a great guy. Get my
we forgot to play the best SmackDown in that debate.
Jane, you ignorant slut. Jane, you ignorant slut. Jane, you ignorant slut.
Oh, we forgot to kill the loop.
That was yeah.
That's all right. See, this is what I mean. So anyway, that's what I was talking about. If you go to Patreon, go to Substack,
then we can hire somebody to remember to kill the loop.
Yeah, or we can take the time to really prep it. I mean, today we were scrambling. Like if I didn't wake up feeling sick today, I would have worked and we wouldn't have been able to pull this show together because there was just a ton to do at the last minute.
Yes.
Because this monk debate dropped and we figured we can't not cover this. We have to cover it. And if we're going to cover it right, we have to watch the whole thing, and it's an hour and 40 minutes. So that really would put a big thing. So anyway, point is, the more we can get coming in,
I dumped
the more
the
time we can
Wednesday
take
video
off work.
on him. And then I complained like 15 minutes before we went on.
I dropped the link for him at 2:00. He didn't tell me it sucked until 7:15. All right, whatever.
Did you drop a link?
Well, I created the link. I mean, you saw it on the link, right?
I didn't know. Well, later on I saw it. I didn't realize.
You saw it in the feed? Oh, yeah. No, you can see the links whenever because you have the YouTube studio, so you can go in and see it.
So listen, everybody, 10:00, the Wednesday video is going to drop. It's going to be really funny. Once he takes out that logo, you'll get a premiere notification. Remember to click to get notifications from us.
Yes.
And check it out. It is very funny.
Well, these are some things you could do right now. Click to make sure you get notifications. Hit the subscribe button. We've got a decent amount of subscribers during this episode, which is what I love to see. See, this is why you have to badger people. You have to sell yourself. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. Everybody is big on
once we get to 5,000, I'm going to do my Fauci dance of the 7 masks.
Cricket says, have you thought of lower Patreon levels? I have a bunch of give $1 a month. You can give $1 a month. I mean, there's no there's nothing preventing you from giving $1 a month, but I don't think the benefits kick in until $5. But like if people are having a hard time, if they're spread thin, send us an email. We can work with you on that. We don't like to deny anybody.
Talk to us. We might need a favor from you in the future. We might call on you.
Yeah, as long as you don't mind running a duffel bag or two down to the airport for us, then maybe we can work something out.
Pura vida, Gene.
Pura vida.
Pura
Gene.
vida.
All right, everybody. Well, does that wrap us here?
I think that wraps us, man.
All right.
Get to work.
We got a big crowd here. I got some work I got to take care of now. 10 o'clock. Be back here in 1 hour for Russell. Russell put his heart and soul into this. That's why I told him.
I will be here. I will be there in the chat.
I felt bad because I saw the life drain from his face when he signed on, and he was upset about the logo thing. And I could tell he was upset, and I felt bad because he put a lot of work into this, and I felt like I fucked it up with a stupid oversight that to me, it looks okay, but we won't hash that out. He's precious about his work.
I'm being an artiste.
That's fine. You earned it. You put the work in, so that's fine. And, as a filmmaker and a theater guy myself, I definitely respect that. So we will put it out into the world as he wants it, and that'll be in 1 hour. All right. Please subscribe to the channel if you can on the way out. Thank you once again to our Patreon subscribers. Thank you to Ellen, our caller. Yeah, exactly. There you have it. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. What I have not had time to do is incorporate Nick's theme song into an outro. I only have it as an intro version. I'll edit together a version for our outro. So you're going to get our boring old retro outro now, but I hope it's good enough for you. Thank you guys very much. To those who are new to the channel, we hope you subscribe and we hope you hit that bell, and we hope to see you back here again. We do streams every Thursday afternoon and Sunday evening, but tonight, yes, be back here in 1 hour, 10 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody. Be safe. Be well. See you next time.
Please clap.